Um, Hello everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So welcome to today's session. So we're going to be looking at pattern recognition as regards to like data storytelling, how you can look out for patterns when you're doing your data analysis and how you can incorporate it in your visualization, how it can help you to tell a good story. So let me just quickly share my screen. And then we get started. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. So we're going to be working with a world food population production data set. And I'm just going to walk you through what we need to do. So first, let's just take a look at our data set and see what it's about. So this is it. So I better just trying to. All right. So our data set is the world food production. So this is a data set about various crops, and we have some fruits here, oranges, all of these things listed here, alongside a couple of other farm produce, right? Across various countries, and for the year, for a wide range of years up until I think 2021. So we are going to be analyzing this. There are a lot of dimensions across which we can analyze this data and try to figure out patterns and insights. And that's what we're going to be doing. But first, let's just get an understanding of first step in every data analysis, or is to get an understanding of your data set. I always say this, first step is to get an understanding of the data set you're working with, because if you don't understand what you're working with, you're already starting off very wrong, because you're going to have wrong assumptions about your data because you haven't checked and firmly understood what your data set is about. So let's do that. Let's try to see what columns we have. Okay. So we have entity, we have year, we have the various crops like we talked about. Let's take a look at the year range that we have. Let's try and see. Let's use unique. Okay, so we have from 1961 down to 2021. Let's take a look at the entities that we have. So we have a lot of entities. So basic entities here, like the countries that we're working with. So we have a lot of countries here. And first thing that we can do is we can try to limit this to African countries. I want us to limit the scope of this to African countries alone. Let's try and understand food production rates in African countries. So that's one thing we'll do. We're going to clean this up and try to filter for only African countries. And one way that we can do that is we're going to try. Okay, so this is the list of all the entities we have. First of all, let's change this name entity so that it's a lot easier to work with. Let's say country, right? So now let's look at African countries. So there's a library that we can use. There's a world of countries here. Um, you just simply need to run this to install it in your environment. And then what we want to do now, if you just go through this, going to see how to use it, import this, and then initialize this class. But we want to map our countries, want to map countries to their continent. So if you're looking at the columns in our data set, you see that we just have, let me do this again since I've changed some stuff. So we just have the country, we have the year, then the rest of the things that we have here are just basically the crops that we're looking at, right? The produce, farm produce we're working with. So we need to go ahead and introduce another dimension, but not necessarily because we want to analyze from that point. We more or less want to filter out countries that are not African countries. So let's come here and pick up a function that's, let's pick up a function that is supposed to help us to map to continents. So I think so that should be my world. Okay. So this is get country, get continent, get continent. Okay. Okay, this is get continent list. This is get continent. This is get country data. This is country name. Yes, get country list of continent name. We want get continent. I think I just worked with it. Get country, continent name. Yes, this is it. Okay. So this is it. That's what we want to work with. And then let's say we use India, right? Okay, so we are on the right track now. This is what we want to use. And then we'll just go ahead and define a function that would allow us to do that. Get continent. Then probably put in the country. Then we'll go ahead and say that if this is equals to Africa, then we should we can set this to continent. Then if it's Africa, then we should go ahead and return. Otherwise, it's going to return none regardless. So, but one thing we need to do is we need to use a try block, because if we try to put something that is not, we're going to get an error. If we try to put something that is not a country, we'll get an error. So one thing we should do is use a try and except block to ensure that we don't run into errors. Okay, so we'll go ahead and apply this. We'll go ahead and apply this to our, just clean that up. Apply this to our country column so that we can get the continent from there. So let's do that. We want to assign whatever we're doing to new. Just to keep things consistent, let's make that. And then let's do this. So we have our get continent X. Okay. So basically, this is just picking each cell and applying the get continent function, returning Africa if that's what we have. Otherwise, it's returning none. So we'll go ahead and do this and see what we have. So now let's look at our data sets. Interesting. So we should try to see um we should try to see which values have nulls and which ones have actually been assigned a continent like we expected. So let's do that. So if we run this df country, is that spelling correct? Continent, yes. Okay. Okay. First is it to be interesting to know how many columns. Okay. Out of how many? Okay. So we have this number for 9,000 out of 11,000, 11,912. So we have about 9,000 of it that are non-African countries. Let's see. Okay, we have about 2,000 that are African countries. But let's go ahead and review this for ourselves. So we can go ahead and do this. Can go ahead and pull out the values. Okay. One thing that we want to look out for is one thing we want to look out for is if we have captured everything and if the ones that are non-African countries are truly non-African countries. So we would inspect because again, like I said, when you're doing data analysis, especially when the source of your data, it's not an internal source of data. Like it's not generated from your applications, from your organization. It's data that was sourced from external, external sources, right? So you're not certain about the source of data. So you need to validate your data at every point. It's not something that you leave for data engineers working in your organization. You have to, as a data analyst that is working with the data, you validate even the operations that you are performing on your data to ensure that you are getting the results that you want. Because one mistake leads to reporting mistake that can influence the decisions of whoever you're reporting to. Okay, so let's go ahead and confirm that we have all the countries that we want. Oh, sorry. I'm going to check for continents. What I'm doing now, I'm going to check for all the continents that are known. I want to see what values they have. Okay, so this is an interesting list. We have Africa, the entire continent itself, as a country here. So we won't be working with this. We'll limit ourselves to just countries for now. So we'll just make another data set out of this. Then we'll have a look at some of the countries that are listed here. I mean, this is a lot to go through. So one thing that we can do is reduce the burden of things that we have to go through, like reduce the list of things we have to go through here by maybe assigning some of these countries to a continent so that we won't have to filter through everything. So let's try to do that. Let's see. So we can come here and modify our function a bit. Let's be like, okay, yeah, let's do that. So that we are assigning all countries to a particular continent, to their particular continent, sorry. So, okay. So the list is somewhat reduced. You can see Africa, we can see Americas, Asia, all of that, Caribbean, Central Asia, China, Congo, Cote d'Ivoire, this Democratic Republic of Congo again, Eastern Africa. So the FAO, I think is, let's see, we can do a quick Google search. FAO. Okay, so Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. Okay, so we will limit our data set to strictly countries, right? Reports from countries. So we eliminate those as well. I'm working on the assumption right now that it's not going to have an impact on our data set, right? So we're just going to eliminate that just to make the work easier for us. Focus just on the countries we're working with. So we'll be eliminating all of this. We'll be eliminating, for now, let's try to pick up the countries that we not picked, right? So I've seen Congo, I've seen Cote d'Ivoire, I've seen Democratic Republic of Congo. Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, if you guys have seen any other African countries, please feel free to make a comment either in the chat or you can unmute yourself. All right, so I think that's all right. Hello. Is there anybody in this call?
Yes, I think so.
Sorry, I didn't hear you. Okay, someone said West Africa. West Africa is not a country now, is it? It's just a region. So yeah, we are just focusing on countries. So I think that's it. So let's figure out how we are going to add that to our list of continents so that we can go ahead and work with our data set. Okay, so for countries that fall under that, we'll use that, and then So for these countries, we want to assign what did we miss?
Um, yeah, please, what about Ethiopia?
Okay, Ethiopia. Okay, yes, that's true. Thank you. I didn't see that. Okay, so yes, Ethiopia works. Why is former though? I'm not sure, but we'll work with it regardless. So we have about 215 new. So let's just call this additional.
Sorry, ma'am. There is Sudan also
That's
somewhere there.
Sudan.
Yeah, although format too.
Okay, thank you. Sudan is an African country. My geography is coming out here. I'm sorry, I'm going to search to confirm. Yes, okay. All right. Sudan is part of it. So please just take a look and be sure that we've not missed anything else. Okay. Okay, I think we're good. All right, we'll run this. And now we want to introduce a new column for this. We want to make, they already have that column, so we just want to make it Africa, right? Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll filter for these ones that we had previously. We'll filter for the ones that have just Africa, right? So from our initial data frame, we can filter for Africa, just Africa, and then Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead. So I'm filtering for the continents, for the countries. Remember, initially we went back and made a change and included all continents. So I'm going back to filter for only countries that belong to Africa, and then I'm joining it with our additional data frame. Yes, go. Do you have a question? Somebody is unmuted. Hello. Emmanuel Okeke. Do you have a question? Okay, please, if you don't have a question, please mute yourself. Okay. So we'll go ahead and do that. All right. And then we should just put it back to DF, right? So we have filtered out for just African countries. And then next step is we know the shape of our data already. I think about 2000 plus rows. Okay, so we can clean up the column names, because it's going to be difficult to do all of this analysis with all of these names, right? The length of these names as they are. So we can just, we already know it's production data sets and it's measured in tons, and so there's no point for the redundancy here. So let's go ahead and just clean that up. Rename columns basically. So we can use regex for this. So we have a sub function that allows us to specify. I want to look out for this. Probably I want to just start production. So I specify what I'm looking out for, and then I specify everything else after it, right? So this dot represents like any element, after any element whatsoever. So the plus represents like continuity, right? So like more elements, right? More than one, basically. And so I want to replace it with this, with an empty string, and I want to do it for, let me just try this first. Yeah, that should. Okay, so we have a trailing space at the end, right? We don't want that, so we can as well do this. Oh, okay. So yes, I need to specify this so that it knows to treat it as regex as a pattern. So then I know that, okay, it has taken care of the white space. If it was a new line, whatever it would have been, this would take care of white spaces as well as new lines. So I'm just going to apply this, right? I'm just going to map my column name to this, apply to it. So I'm doing it to column. Then I want it to happen in place. Okay, yeah, what's okay. Okay, what's going on? So we have this, we sub this, then we have columns. It's this, I think. Okay. So right, so if we do this, looking out for this, our column names, we should have everything in order now. And so we can go ahead and begin to ask ourselves some questions about our data sets, right? So we've seen that we have, how many countries do we have in this data set? There are lots of, like I said earlier at the start of this, there are lots of dimensions to analyze this against. It can be overwhelming to try to see everything at once. So one thing that you can do is try to, please, if you're not, if you don't have a question, please mute yourself. It affects people on YouTube as well, not just those of us on Zoom. So please, if you're not asking a question, please do well to mute yourself. Okay. So we can try to get a sense of our data. We can try to look at some statistics concerning our data, right? Just try to understand some descriptive statistics concerning our data before we try to generate some questions. Like I was saying, it can be very overwhelming to try to understand everything at once. It makes sense to pick a question, start from one point, start from one small dimension, and just make your way through till you get a full sense of your data, right? So that means that you could be spending hours trying to do some exploratory analysis because you want to fully understand your data, and also because of like the complexity of your data. The data set I have picked for us to work with is, like I said, you're talking about various years, you're talking about 50-something countries. We're talking about I didn't count how many years, but 1961 to 2000 2020, what's 2021. That's a lot of countries and a lot of years rather. So we want to be able to see, okay, for these various dimensions that we have, what was the performance of like crop production across these various categories? What was the performance of what was crop production like for in this particular country for this particular year? You can just try to start from somewhere. So for now, let's just do a, let's try to do a descriptive, let's use the describe, pandas describe function, right? And try to see what we have here. Yeah. Okay. So if I do this, it includes the year, gives us the mean, which is not valid, right? gives us this, but then we get to get a sense of these other values, right? We get a sense of, okay, across all the years, this is the mean like ton of production, right? The mean ton of production across the various years, across the various countries as well. So this as well, we also get to see like the maximum ton of production, the maximum like ton that was produced. So we see this. We also see this for oranges as well. We see this, you can just get a general sense of your data set, the range of values that you are working with. But like I said, this can be difficult to make sense of initially. So we can try to do a bit of digging deep, right? Trying to understand it at lower levels of granularity, right? So let's do that. For our use case, right? Let's try to see, I'll just add a comment here. Let's try to see total tons produced for the latest 2 years of our data sets or the latest year of our data set. Let's start from there. So So we already know that the latest year here is 2021. So we're going to do going to add a new column where we sum up the total. We want to know the sum of all the crops, sum of like production that was done for all the crops, everything per particular year. So let's go back. I think I'll make this head so I always get to see the data and know what we're working with. Okay. So we can add a column and call it total produced, because every row represents a particular country and a particular year. So summing up a row is not out of order, right? So let's do that. And let's try to do the sum of, let's say from this, from maize to this, right? So I'm just going to confirm that this matches. Okay, so yes, we want to start from the second one, 0, 1, 2, actually. So that's what we're working with. Then we want to sum it along this. So okay, let's see. Okay. Let's see what might be giving us. What does the error say? Unsupported operand type for float and string. Okay. Okay, so we have continents here. Let's see if we can drop continents because we're already certain that it's only Africa, that is the continent here. I mean, so we can go ahead and drop it. Okay. So with this now, there's no other string on our data set. So let's go ahead and see what we have. Okay. So we'll go ahead now and try to plot this. Try to plot this, but then we want to filter. Remember we said we want to start from a particular year. So we'll filter for 2021. So let's see what we can do. Let's use a bar plot, right? And let's specify for our x-axis, we want to see, and then for our y-axis, we want to see the total produced, right? So let's do that. We specify our data to be EF 2021. Go ahead and specify that we don't want error bars. Okay, this is looking horrible, so we are just going to switch this up. Okay, looks a lot better. But it makes, I mean, we can see from here that South Africa has the highest crop production, which is interesting and leads to a lot more questions. But first, let's try and arrange this in order. One question that I think that we can get to ask ourselves from here is South Africa. Does South Africa have the most record? So it can be that South Africa actually just has the most record. And so because of that, it sums up to being the country with the most produce. And then the rest of these countries don't have that many records as South Africa. So that's one way that you can dig deeper into your data and try to understand it better. But like I said, let's try to sort this. It's not one thing I would do here is to
Time is up.
okay. I will be wrapping up now. Okay. So now it's easier to follow the pattern of growth for our data, right? And we're able to see that, okay, South Africa is first, then Morocco, then Mozambique. And then, like I said, from this now, there are a number of questions that we can raise. Like, do we have similar records, like I've said, for these various countries? And is this a consistent pattern? If we try to check this against 2020, what will we find? That's something else that we can do. So, but for today, right, we will stop here. We'll continue with this data set. We'll dig deeper into it, look into time series analysis with this, and just try to figure out some patterns from our data. I'm going to end the class here because our time is up.
Please, can we
But
get
when
the notebook?
can you get the notebook? You get the notebook at the end on Monday, right? When we finish up with this particular data set on Tuesday. Or on the third session.
Okay,
Hello,
sure.
I also have a question. Please, is our project based on this data set?
Based on this particular one.
Data
So,
set, yes.
so no. I wouldn't want you to work with this. I would prefer that you source for data sets yourself from Kaggle and work with that. Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.